Hi, this is Heidi at Grow House. Thanks for coming to us virtually for your Wreaths workshop. We're excited to give you tips and tricks for how to create your own wreath at home. I have a couple of samples behind me. One is an 18-inch grapevine wreath. That's a certain style. The other one is a 36-inch Fraser with all kinds of embellishments. What we're going to use for the sample today, however, is a 24-inch Fraser. This is more typically done for a front door, and you can consider Fraser or a balsam mix. We're going to do Fraser today. So what you need to decide is 18-inch, 24-inch, 48-inch evergreen or grapevine wreath. This is the typical size. When you make the wreath, things to consider are, where is the bow going to go? At the top, at the bottom, on the side, or off center? It really doesn't matter, and it's sort of fun to change from year to year. So selecting the bow is one of the first things to work with. And then do you just do a spray of something on the wreath and balance the bells and the greens side to side, leaving some of it blank? Do you make the top more decorative than the bottom, but do the embellishments all the way around? It really doesn't matter. It's personal choice and can go in many different ways. Sometimes we lay the products out before we begin and play with it to help us decide. You might not know exactly how it's going to turn out until you begin the process. Along with your wreath, the supplies that you will need are glue. We use a hot glue pan because the amount that we put together, this is just so much quicker. But a glue gun works well also. If you don't have a glue gun, then we use wire, stick wire typically, but paddle wire can work also. You need scissors to cut a fresh end on your bow. We use this tape to wrap around the wire so that the hook on the back of your wreath doesn't scratch the door. Sometimes we'll paint products, but you don't have to use that. And then we certainly use our Felco pruners to cut the stems of the evergreens and fresh greens. So that's sort of the construction material. And then we get into what we affectionately call jazz or accents, berries and cones and pods to add to the wreath. And then we also use wintergreens. This is incense cedar, and I'll show you how to cut this into pieces to use, because when you purchase it, maybe it doesn't look user-friendly. We use Oregonia a lot. These are now called fresh greens, Oregonia, seeded eucalyptus pods, and then the silver dollar eucalyptus. You having fun yet, Dandelion? Huh? You want to join our workshop? One of the first things we do is to create a coated wire for the hanger, for the loop on the back side of your wreath. And how you do that is you take a piece of stick wire and this floral tape. The trickiest part about it is getting it started. But once you get it beginning to wrap around the wire, you just keep twirling and holding the tape, and it just gets down the wire all the way to the end. Then you select part of the wreath where you've got the wire crossing each other right there, that sort of X, and I'm going to make this loop right by that. If you can get it across, it's helpful so that it doesn't move, but usually the wreath is heavy enough that it isn't going to go anywhere. And so just if you wrap it around itself and tuck it in like that, I've got a nice loop to hang on my door. That will now be the top of your wreath. We have pre-tied bows to make this easy for you, but I will show you how to tie a bow. You decide how long you want the tails. Typically it's a foot to 18 inches for the tails. And then you pinch and just hold on to the ribbon in between a thumb and forefinger. You go up with the first loop and you decide how big you're going to want that loop. Pinch again. Now the ribbon is coming across the other way, and I'm going to pinch right there. That's the trickiest part, is kind of holding on to it. I'm going to make a 6 loop bow, so that means 3 loops per side. And when you get halfway through, so if I want 6 loops, I've got 3 so far, I'm going to now cover my thumb. That is where the wire is going to go to hold it all together. So I got to cover the works, if you will. And now I'm going to still just keep looping back and forth, making sure that it's the same length on each side. And like I said, we've got pre-tied bows for you because it takes a lot of practice to do these, but can be kind of fun to do your own as well. Once I have all the loops made, I'm going to get a piece of stick wire and I'm going to put it through that section where my thumb is holding it, and I'm simply going to pull it around and wrap it tight. I have decided to place my bow at the bottom of the wreath, so it's simply sitting here right now. I will wire it in later when there's no concern for glue getting on it, and I've made my commitment that that is indeed where it's going to sit. And that means that up here on the top of the wreath is where my loop is. So you orient the wreath so that you can see the bottom, and it presents to you like it would present on the door, but I'm doing it upside down for your purposes. But you would flip it so that it lays out like you see it typically. And then what we use first is the greens. So I talked about this incense cedar, this gold tip cedar, and how I would use that. And you simply make a cut on the stem all the way at the bottom of the branch, and then I'm going to decide if I can't use a tip and a tail and a couple of pieces of these. I'm going to use the natural bend of the branch to sort of embellish this bow area. I'm simply going to place it. I'm not going to glue it yet. I'm going to sort of balance this vignette before I use any glue. You put in some of the greens, the winter greens, and then maybe I'm going to put in some of the fresh greens as well. So again, this is Oregonia, and maybe I want to make sort of a cluster going out from either side, balancing as you go. When you stick it in, you want to make sure that it has enough of a stem so that when you glue it into place, it will really stay put. You might even need to cut clusters about this size and really make a strong statement to compete with the bow so that it really speaks to you. There are many guidelines to consider when you do a wreath, but I will say what I believe is the most important is what knocks your socks off. If you think it's fabulous, that's what counts more than anything. You have to be a little careful how hard you push or you're going to rearrange everything. I think that stem was too big, so I think I have to cut it a little bit more. The benefit with using a glue gun is you can take your gun when you're ready and just glue these little pieces into place. If you use a glue pan, it's a little bit trickier to get the glue exactly where you need it. You need to take the piece out again, put it in the glue pan, and then put it back into place. Both have merit, but it's just a matter of what tools you have on hand. So then something like the seeded eucalyptus, that has such a nice natural habit to it. It's pretty soft. I think I'll put it on the back of this cluster. Otherwise, I don't know that you see it. If it hangs off too far, it might not quite make the statement that you're looking for. It's just a little something to add to that space. We've got the seeded eucalyptus, or the eucalyptus pods. And that's a pretty fabulous natural element to use in a wreath. Again, don't be afraid to use your clippers and make the cuts. That's the toughest thing to do, is to cut it into little pieces. But you can and you should. These could also go in your spruce tip container. So your container might match your wreath at your front door. I'm just continuing to build upon the design and place it as I go, just to make sure that I like the design, and then again at the end we'll glue it all into place. I've placed the lotus pods next. You want to make sure that you put any of your bigger accents into place before you don't have room. So lots of times, if it's a lotus pod or a cone or a bird's nest or something, you want to make a decision about where that's going to go. Usually we do 3 elements. 1s, 3s, and 5s are that typical approach for any design balance. So I've got the 2 smaller ones on the top here, and then the larger one on the bottom. It's okay if it's offset a little bit, but it still just makes the story really talk to each other. And I put the green berries into place. I've had them come up a little bit into the wreath here. And now I'm going to do some white berries for pop. This is called deconstructing. If you have a big stem of a that you might get at Grow House, you can use it in many different ways. So these 2 bottom branches, I just went like this. I just pulled them off. This larger branch I can then use maybe in a spruce tip container or somewhere else. You don't have to cut the whole thing to pieces, but getting the knowledge of how to cut and where to make sure you maximize your pieces is always a good thing to practice. So now I've got these smaller pieces that I'll put into place, and then we'll glue it all at the end. So I have everything glued into place and ready to hang my wreath on my door. If you're like me, I'm a more is more, and it's hard to know when to quit. Maybe as the holidays get closer, I'll put this little cardinal in here just to add a pop of red. So thanks for listening virtually, and we hope we've given you all of the tips and tricks that you need to be successful to make your own wreath. Please give us a call at Grow House if you need any additional help, and think of us for your Christmas tree needs too. Bye.